Well, last night we were joined by the Israeli government spokesman, Mark Regev. For a different perspective tonight, our guest is Diana Boutou, a Palestinian-Canadian lawyer and a former spokeswoman for the Palestinian Liberation Organisation. Diana Boutou, what's the feeling on the ground where you are in Ramallah?
Most people are feeling both anger, outraged, and also very vulnerable because this is not the first time that Israel has violated international law. The difference this time is that Israel seems to be going to extreme lengths to not only violate international law, but maintain a blockade that the world has deemed to be a crime against humanity. So people are feeling that unless the world steps forward now and actually stops Israel, that many more of these crimes can and will continue to happen.
On this point about international law, on the program last night, Mr. Regev said that Israel had acted legally under international law because he said that you are allowed to intercept somebody who's breaching your blockade or intends to do so if you have warned them. What do you say to that?
That's actually incorrect, legally incorrect and factually incorrect. On the legal side of things, as Israel should perhaps know, any blockade that is imposed on a country is considered to be an act of war. So the fact that Israel has declared a blockade on the Gaza Strip is itself an act of war. And Israel should know this because in 1956, when the Egyptians declared that they were going to impose a naval blockade on Israel, the Israeli army declared war against Egypt, backed by several nations. But more importantly, and I think that this is the key part of this, is that Israel seems to forget that it is an occupation of Gaza. So you can't declare war on a territory that you are already occupying. It's actually to the contrary. Israel, as an occupier, is supposed to be providing the very things that they are not providing. They're supposed to provide medical aid. They're supposed to provide food, assistance. They're not supposed to be bombing the area. So what Israel's doing is actually flipping it on its head. So it's both legally incorrect and factually incorrect. And I know that if there is an independent inquiry into this, that any jurist will actually find exactly what it is that I've said, that what Israel has done is illegal under international law.
On the blockade, Egypt has announced that it is going to reopen its border with Gaza to circumvent the blockade. What effect do you think that will have?
I certainly hope that this is true. One of the problems that Palestinians have been facing is the fact that there's been a blockade that's been imposed by Israel on three sides, and the fact that the Egyptians seem to be complying with this as well. I think that the opening up of the Rafah crossing point will do much, I hope, to bring in the much-needed supplies into the Gaza Strip. But that's not enough. What really needs to be done is the siege needs to be lifted. Palestinians need to be given their freedom. And these small stopgap measures, while important, need to be linked to something that's broader, which is freedom for all Palestinians. And I really hope that this happens soon. Now is the time that this needs to happen, and it needs to happen swiftly with international condemnation.
Let me put to you another point that Mr. Regev made last night, which is that those on the flotilla initiated the violence, and we've seen video which seems to show Israeli soldiers being set upon when they've rappelled onto the boat.
Well, you know, this is a case of Israel flipping the situation on its head. If you look very closely and very carefully at the video, of all of the video that was released, it's important to keep in mind that what Israel was doing was it was invading a boat. It was invading a boat in international waters, which is considered to be a violation of international law, and as they said, an act of war. The fact that these individuals were terrified, the fact that they saw these commandos, masked gunmen, coming down from a helicopter, and that they then decided to defend themselves and protect their own lives, is something that, rather than condemning the activists, we should be condemning Israel for actually raiding the boat in the first place. Again, another violation of international law. But I think that there's also another issue that needs to be raised when it comes to this particular case, which is that if the situation had been reversed and had it been that Palestinians were the ones who were doing this to Israel, I think that the world would have been uniformly condemning Israel's actions. So I don't think that we should be looking now to the actions of a few terrified people who themselves were trying to protect their lives from an illegal raid.
What do you think of the United States' reaction so far?
I'm saddened that the United States has not come out and condemned the incident as strongly as they should. One thing that is really important to keep in mind is that if you look at the United States' condemnations as regard the North Korea-South Korea ship, and this was an armed vessel, this was a military vessel, and the lengths to which the United States went to condemn the action vis-a-vis North Korea, and you contrast that with the statements that have just come out recently by the White House, you'll see such a stark difference. When in the case of North Korea and South Korea, this was a military ship. And in the case of the flotilla coming to Gaza, these are humanitarian activists. I would have expected that at the very least that they would have used the same level of condemnation, the same language to condemn Israel's actions as they did North Korea's actions.
Stepping back, what do you think might be the long-term ramifications of this incident?
If I wanted to look for a silver lining, and I hate to use that terminology, but I think we do have to begin to realize that this is not just a case of Israel attacking Palestinians as it's done in the past, but it's actions of flying in the face of international law. I think that what the world is beginning to realize is two things. First and foremost is that this blockade is illegal. Justice Goldstone in his report indicated that this is a form of collective punishment and a crime against humanity. I hope that at the very least that this incident has shed light on the brutality of the blockade and the extreme lengths that Israel is going to go to continue to not only violate law, but to uphold its violations of international law. And secondly, I think it's very important for the world to really realize that Israel's violations of law are not simply confined to the Palestinians, but go beyond that. Just this year alone, if you recall, Israel had forged passports from around the world in order to carry out an assassination. What it demonstrates is that Israel views itself as above the law, and it considers that the Palestinians are beneath the law. I really hope that now the time has come where the world begins to recognize that this isn't a small, isolated incident. This isn't just a one-off, but really puts into place measures to actually stop Israel from carrying out these crimes in the future. And I do believe that the momentum has come, and people are beginning to realize that now is the time to stop Israel rather than allow it to continue.
Dana Butu, many thanks for making time to come and speak to Lateline. We appreciate it.